Now starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's pre-proposal webinar for the Service Coordination and Navigation for Youth at the Highest Risk of Violence Involvement, RFP. Throughout today's webinar, you'll probably hear us refer to this RFP and the program model as SCaN because it is a mouthful. My name is Samantha Edwards, Project Manager at DFSS for the Prevention and Intervention portfolio. And I am joined today by a few of my colleagues. I'll let you all introduce yourselves. Lisa Hampton.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lisa Hampton. I'm the Director of Prevention and Intervention for Youth Services Division of the Department of Family and Support Services.
Thank you, Lisa. Julia?
I'm Julia Talbot. I am the person who manages the RFP process for the department, and I'll be talking a little bit about the logistics of how to make your application go smoother.
Thank you, Julia. Looks like Tom, could you advance to the next slide? Thank you. A few housekeeping notes. So everyone has been placed on mute just so that we can quickly get through today's slides. Please submit your questions via the question box and we will respond to those at the end of the presentation. Please also use the question box to notify us if there are any technical issues. You should be able to access the question box in your sort of control center that is probably to the right of your screen. Here's a look at today's agenda. We've already done our welcome and introductions. We'll go over the purpose of this RFP, the background, some information about the scope and description for the program model, selection criteria, and then I'll hand it over to Julia and she'll discuss the timeline, technical assistance for applicants and e-procurement, and then as I said before, we'll handle questions at the end. So here's an overview of the purpose of this RFP. DFSS seeks to support service coordination and navigation for youth at the highest risk of violence involvement who are ages 14 to 24 from one of the 4 targeted community areas, which are Greater Grand Crossing, New City, South Lawndale, and South Shore. This RFP seeks to stabilize youth in their current environment, increase their self-efficacy, and assist in their transition to adulthood. Ultimately, we hope that these interventions can help reduce their involvement in violence, in addition to contributing to a reduction in violence at the community level as well. This is some background on this RFP and how the SCaN model came to be. The Mayor's Office of Violence Reduction has focused its efforts on 15 priority communities that have experienced the highest levels of violence. DFSS is currently supporting 6 of those communities through our existing service coordination and navigation delegate agencies. Those 6 communities are Auburn Gresham, Austin, Inglewood, Humboldt Park, North Lawndale, and Roseland. Through this RFP, we're elected to support an additional 4 communities where gun violence has also been highly concentrated, as mentioned in the previous slide. For this RFP, current SCaN delegate agencies are not eligible to apply in an effort to increase community capacity and ensure place-based knowledge of the targeted community areas. If you're interested in more information on the Mayor's Office of Violence Reduction and the current SCaN delegate agencies, those can be found online at the City of Chicago's Public Safety and Violence Reduction webpage. There is a link to the webpage on page 3 of the RFP. We strongly encourage you to reach out to the current SCaN delegate agencies if you want to learn more about the program model and their implementation of the model within this past year. I won't read through all of this, so I'll just highlight a few of the bullet points for the program description. DFSS is looking to support a lead partner in a community area that has expertise applying best practices for working with youth, service coordination and navigation models that are identified on page 7 of the RFP. We're looking for a partner who has the building blocks for working with youth at the highest risk of violence involvement, but also has experience incorporating youth voice throughout the process. And that you have current programming options in one of the 4 community areas that we've already discussed, but are also on page 10 of the RFP. I'll give you a few seconds to read through this. All of these things can be found on page 6 of the RFP. Here's a copy of the DFSS Youth Division's programming pyramid. In this pyramid, you'll see that the target population for this RFP is at the very top of the pyramid. You'll also notice in italics that we have included the factors that define youth at the highest risk of violence involvement. We'll dig deeper into what this means in the next 2 slides when we discuss the eligibility criteria for youth in this programming model. So the target population for this RFP are youth ages 14 to 24 years old from one of the 4 community areas: Greater Grand Crossing, New City, South Longdale, and South Shore. We are expecting respondents to demonstrate place-based knowledge of one of the 4 targeted community areas. In addition to residing in one of the target community areas, youth must also meet the following criteria. They must meet 2 of the following criteria, at least 1 from criteria 1 and 1 from criteria 2. So in this blue box on the left, you'll see that criteria 1 includes active street engagement, which means that they are known to be actively engaged in violence, a gang, or a clique, or they've had recent or active justice involvement, which could look like multiple arrests for violent offenses, being recently released from prison, or the Department of Juvenile Justice, recently released from Cook County Jail, or the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. They could be currently on probation or currently on parole or aftercare. In addition to criteria 1, they will also need to meet at least one of these 3 criteria as well. So the first one is some sort of previous involvement in violence. That could mean as being a recent victim, a perpetrator, or even a witness of violence, or having a close family member or friend be a victim of violence. Another one is being disconnected from school or work. You can see how we have defined that. Being disconnected from school means being absent more than 50% of the last quarter or out of work for at least 6 months. And then the last one is having some evidenced violent online behavior. So again, you who to be eligible for this program must also reside in one of the target community areas and meet at least one of these criteria from criteria 1 and then 1 from criteria 2. And this is on page 11 of the RFP if you want to review this further. This is an overview of the program requirements. So again, youth served must be between the ages of 14 and 24 and at the highest risk of violence involvement as defined by our criteria in the previous slide. Respondents must develop a program budget based on a $7,000 cost per youth for a comprehensive array of services. You should anticipate serving between 30 to 48 youth annually based on your selected community area and must develop a budget reflective of those required costs. We also ask respondents to demonstrate the following in their application. 1, a strong understanding of the challenges associated with reaching youth at the highest risk of violence involvement in all of the recruitment avenues that have been listed in the RFP. A referral and communication network focused on ensuring the right youth in need of services are identified. A respondent that utilizes best practices and utilizes a trauma-informed and gender and LGBTQ+ responsive navigator and program manager. Additionally, organizations must demonstrate fiscal capacity by having an internal operating budget of at least $250,000. This is a brief overview of the Navigator role. For more information on this role, you can refer to pages 11 through 14 of the RFP. Here are just a highlight of some of the roles, some of the responsibilities of the Navigator. They are full-time employees, which means that their time is fully on this contract and this program model. It cannot be split with other responsibilities within your agency. Salaries must be at least $42,000 annually. In addition to that, their role, they will utilize the following engagement and recruitment sources. So in the RFP, we have listed out a few places where referrals may come for youth at the highest risk of violence involvement. Those include Chicago Public Schools, Cook County Juvenile Probation, street outreach organizations, the police department, homeless shelters, in addition to other DFSS programming, including our homeless and workforce divisions. Navigators are responsible for the intake screening and assessments for case planning with young people on their caseloads. They should be supporting wraparound services and supports, which means either providing those things themselves or having collaborations with other agencies to address things such as mental health services, education, employment and vocational training, health and wellness, or housing supports. Just to name a few, definitely not an inclusive list. And then lastly, navigators are also responsible for connections and coaching. So giving youth referrals and services, but also making sure there's capacity and availability at the agency they're providing a referral for, utilizing a network of identified providers, and they should determine the number of navigators based on their budget and their program design. Again, this is just a high-level overview of the navigator role. For more information on all the things that are encompassed in this role, please refer to pages 11 through 14 of the RFQ. In addition to navigators, there's also a program manager attached to this program model. The program managers are responsible for the program oversight, supervision of the navigators, and other duties, including, but of course not limited to, developing, cultivating, and maintaining community collaborations and referral processes with other agencies, coordinating monthly communication with community and referral partners to ensure service delivery for youth, which may include changes in staffing or program requirements, and sharing information frequently with their navigators. They are responsible for conducting monthly reflective supervision with navigators to ensure the well-being of staff as well as the young people in their caseloads. They are to ensure that data is entered on a weekly basis and reviewed to assess program quality and gaps in services. And then they also will be serving as the liaison to DFSS and responsible for attending the learning cohorts. Again, this is also just a high-level overview of the role of the program manager. For more information on this role, you can refer to page 14 of the RFQ. Learning cohorts are a mandatory component of this program model. They will occur at least quarterly, so there will be at least 4 within a year. The purpose of these cohorts are to build the expertise in the field of violence reduction strategies and engagement with youth at ages 14 to 24 in our target population. They're meant to be a professional development opportunity for navigators and program managers. They also will be focusing on improvement in program impacts and data analysis and evaluation, and exposing in-depth knowledge to critical thinking, supervision, and self-care. Below are some examples of topics we have discussed this year and may discuss next year as well. I'll highlight just a few of the program measures we will be tracking, as well as some of the metrics. So we are seeking respondents that have with evidence of strong past performance against our desired outcomes, especially with our target population. To track the progress towards achieving these outcome goals of this program model and assess success, we will monitor a set of performance indicators that may include but are not limited to this list. So these include things such as we will be tracking whether or not 40% of the youth engaged in the SCaN program model will be less likely to engage in violence upon completion of the model. We will be tracking the percentage of youth who have a sense of increased safety for themselves, their family, and their community, as well as growth in sense of personal agency and self-efficacy. All of these can be found on page 16 of the RFQ. In addition to the aforementioned program measures, we also will be tracking a list of output metrics to indicate and monitor our progress towards the goals of the SCaN program model. So those include things such as the number of youth that are recruited and enrolled in the program, the percent of youth that meet the target population criteria, the percent of youth connected to services as identified in their intake assessment, and the percent of youth that complete their goals. Again, these along with all the program measures can be found on page 16 of the RFP. The next 4 slides are based on the selection criteria. I will not read through all of them, but all of them, the list as well as the associated points with each criteria can be found on page 19 in the RFP. So for the first one related to strength of the proposed program, DFSS is seeking a respondent that has a clear understanding of the target population and their needs and challenges, as well as the assets and challenges of the target community area. We're also looking for a respondent who has an effective approach to recruiting and engaging program participants, especially those that fall within our target program, our target population. I'll give you a few moments to read through the rest of the slide, but again, this and the following 3 slides with all the selection criteria can be found on page 19, along with their associated point totals. To indicate program performance, outcomes, and quality, DFSS is looking for a respondent that demonstrates evidence of strong past performance against desired outcome goals and performance metrics in providing services to the target population. A respondent who has experience using data to inform and improve its services or practices. And a respondent that has relevant systems needed to collect and store key participant and performance data. I'll give you a few more seconds to read through the rest of the bullet points. The next selection criteria is around organizational capacity. So DFSS is looking for a respondent that has qualified staff responsible for program oversight and management, a respondent that has adequate human resources capacity to hire and manage the staff, and that has expertise, again, working with the target population and has the relevant capabilities for infrastructure needed to properly and appropriately serve this group. And the last criteria is around reasonable cost and budget justification and leverage of funds. It is really important that DFSS is looking for a respondent that has the fiscal capacity to implement this program. So applicants are required to develop a budget based on a $7,000 cost per participant for a comprehensive array of services. And respondents must have an operating budget of at least $250,000 in order for the proposal to advance to the evaluation stage. And with that, that wraps up the sort of programming RFP component, and I will turn it over to Julia.
Thank you so much. So, well, welcome. And I'm going to just now, my name is Julia Talbot. I'm the person that does sort of will help walk you through sort of the more technical side of making an actual application. First, I want to just go in and say that we are so happy you're here. We're so excited to be, with the that you are interested, and we want to make sure, or at least I want to make sure, that you have the ability to make the best application you can navigating the city's e-procurement system, which is online. Just to kind of go over a little timeline here, we're pre-proposal webinars. That's today. There's another one on this 27th where we'll go through the exact same PowerPoint. But if you want to have the ability to chat, to ask questions at the end in a live thing, as opposed to emailing or calling and getting responded to that way, those are August 23rd and August 27th. The one on the 27th is at, I believe it's earlier in the morning, but it's also when you signed up, you could sign up for that one as well. The time is on there. The application is due on September 28th at noon. Our application deadlines are firm. They do not change, and we do not accept late applications. I'll go into that probably 4 more times before I'm done with my presentation. And the program period for this program begins January 1st. So even though it's August, we're all sitting here in shorts or In my case, my office is very cold, so I'm not sitting here, and I wouldn't refuse to work anyway. But it's we're all enjoying summer. This program will not begin until January 1st, and so that would give you some time to do a little planning. Let's go to the next slide. So just in case you didn't know, the application is due on September 28th, 2021 at 12 noon. No late applications will be accepted. I tell people to give themselves time. So let's go to the next slide to get their application in. See, start early, save often. That's kind of my e-procurement mantra. If you've never done business with the City of Chicago, you should register into the iSupplier e-procurement systems as soon as possible. I think that there is some, I have some links in the next couple of slides as to where to go, but basically you go to the City of Chicago website and you just type in iSupplier. iSupplier is the applicant, it's the vendor management system that you will use to interface with e-procurement, which is the contracts management system. So you need an iSupplier account to access e-procurement. The iSupplier account is something that you, as the potential vendor or applicant, manage. It's all you in there. And iSupplier, we can't see it, we don't touch it, we don't manage it. We can give you TA on it, but that's not part of, that iSupplier account is yours to manage. The e-procurement system, which manages all of our contract activities, is ours. So you interface with, you access e-procurement via iSupplier. I like to give people sort of these baseline tips. Review the RFP narratives and application questions closely. Remember that they align with the scope and selection criteria, and use the information in the RFP for guidance in formulating your answers. So when you go, if you have a question about where you think of, what we're looking for in terms of guidance, I really, really recommend that people refer to the narrative and scope documents and the selection criteria, because all of those things are intertwined and they align with one another. We spend a certain amount of time making sure that they align with one another, and that those often can give you some guidance. Each application question is limited to 4,000 characters, which includes punctuation and spaces. And so each response is allotted 4,000 characters. That's going to be quite a lot. I mean, it's like about a page at least. And so the system isn't going to tell you when it cuts you off. So I really encourage people to do these things, to write their answers into like a Word document and do the counts that way, so that that you're not going to get cut off. But if you feel like you can get the job done in less than 4,000 characters, please get the job done in less than 4,000 characters. If you need all of those characters, go for it. I would say, having just come off of a summer of reviewing applications, generally speaking, people go into, some people, people do a nice job, but more depth is usually better than less depth. Really short answers means you're not going deep enough. The e-procurement system works best with the Internet Explorer browser, which nobody uses anymore. It works fine in Chrome, Firefox. Trying to think what other ones. They pretty much work. It's pretty much bug-free at this point. It's been up for 4 or 5 years now. If you're having a problem, you're getting kicked out a lot, you're just finding it to be super glitchy, try running it on Internet Explorer, because that's what it was built on. But I haven't heard of people having a lot of problems getting kicked out in a long time. The other tip would be, don't use the back button on your browser. If you do that in the e-procurement environment, it will work, but it will stop saving your work. And so when you go to save, it will give you an error message and kick you out. And then when you go back in, everything you did from the time that you hit that back button is going to be lost. So please don't use it. I use it all the time, and then I regret it because I don't remember, because everybody uses that back, the back button. So can we go to the next slide? So if you are going to be submitting multiple applications for a single RFP, you'll need to set up unique user accounts in iSupplier, but they can use the same email address. And so what you're going to do, if you want to make you know, if you wanted to make 2 applications for this RFP, you would need to use 2 different accounts, but they can go to the same email address, which is important because that's where you're going to get all the correspondence and stuff from us about this RFP. If you have more questions on that, I'm happy to take them. You know, we can talk offline about them. You can submit your application and amend it. So you can submit and you can hit submit. And then if you're like, oh no, I forgot to upload this thing. Oh, I want to change my answer. You can actually take your submitted application, you can pull it back, amend it, and then resubmit it. You can do this up until the due date of September 28th at 12 noon. You can't do it after that. I tell people to avoid the rush and possible mishaps by submitting early. Plan on your submission taking 30 to 60 minutes. I even say do it the day before, just in case. The issue that we have about when I say avoid the rush, it's not that the system gets overloaded. It's that if you're having questions, if you have any kind of problem, if whatever happens, is that we might not be able to call you back in time, or the OBM hotline people might not call you back in time. And so that's when we say avoid the rush. That's what I'm talking about. It's not that the system gets overloaded and goes down. The system handles hundreds of applications at a time, and it hasn't ever crashed, knock on wood. But the humans that support the system actually are, you know, there's a finite number of us, and we don't have the 100 application capacity that, you know, the e-procurement system does. Late applications will not be accepted. And then there's a couple of different places. If you need help specifically for e-procurement, you can call the helpline, which is 744-4357 or 744-HELP. Note that the hotline operates during business hours only, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You can call me. The people at the helpline are a little harder to get a hold of, but they have a higher level of access. You can call me if you, you know, for basic stuff, I can help walk you through some things. But if you're really getting into a problem, like you have a really tangled problem, that's, you know, administrative in nature, I will probably refer you to the helpline. They almost always call back within a day or two if you don't get somebody immediately. I try to call back within 24 hours. But hopefully, you know, you'll start early and you'll be fine and you won't need any of this. Let's go to the next page. If you're a new agency, I just want to kind of give people a heads up. You will be, as part of the registering into our supplier, you have to give your, you know, you're going to have to provide us with your articles of incorporation or any amendment stuff, your IRS affirmation letter, your DUNS number, your CCR, your simple contract registration, and a certificate of good standing letter with the state of Illinois. So those are all kind of documents that you'll probably need to upload up front to kind of even start your application. So you just kind of like to give people a little list so that they can get themselves prepared. And let's go to the next slide. In terms of technical assistance. So if you, we talked about the helpline, we talked about calling me. If you have programmatic questions, please reach out to Samantha Edwards. If you are more of a person that you don't really like talking to people and you'd rather learn by reading or looking at, like, you know, PowerPoints or videos, we have a lot of those training documents. It's those, the alert section of our website often have stuff like that. Also, if you go to the City of Chicago website and you start looking for, you know, e-procurement or online, you know, the online procurement system, you will get to a training page that has lots and lots of those things. I have many of them that I can send to people. That I have screenshots where, you know, I step-by-step walk people through certain functions. You know, here's the list to the training materials and documents that I just referred to. So there's lots and lots of ways for you to learn how to manage the system effectively. Coming up, I'm gonna go walk you through two very common things that people do. It's how to submit and how to accept an amendment. And, you know, hopefully, but I wanna make sure, like, you're supported to the degree that you want to be supported or need to be supported. So let's go to the next slide. Now here we go, how to accept an amendment. So we traditionally do an amendment for all of our RFPs. What we do is we take the questions from the webinar this is recorded and it will be posted on the DFSS website within a day or two. We take those questions though that were asked and we put them into kind of a FAQ packet, and then we PDF it and we attach it as an amendment to the RFQ. That's the ideal situation. So whenever we attach an amendment, that would require people who have started their applications already, or people who, when they just come in, they have to accept the amendment. The acceptance process, as you'll see, is really making sure that applicants or potential applicants such as yourself are very aware of the fact that they are being held responsible for the information that is contained in the amendment, which in this case will be FAQs. But sometimes they're more serious. You can do an amendment if you have to change the date, which we haven't done, in knock on wood, in a few years, or if some sort of critical information was left out, you do an amendment for that. So it's kind of a good idea to pay attention to what's in those amendments and at least give them a cursory glance. They also can be helpful if you want to know the answer to a specific question that's asked in the webinar and you just didn't quite catch it all. You know, basically all that stuff will be written out. So to accept an amendment, you're going to log into your RFP, to the correct RFP. That's what this screen here is showing. And you're going to get this little warning. You know, you're like, oh, I just started my application, or I need to start my application. You'll get this warning saying that there is an amendment. Then if you have not, started an application, which you would go into the actions field, which is on this right-hand side with the, the right-hand side circle, and you would pull down the pull-down menu, and then you would go to create quote and hit go. And that's going to take you to the next screen, which is on the next slide. So here we are in the application. You're starting a quote, which is e-procurement speak for starting an application. In the e-procurement environment, pretty much anything that's in that sort of light blue will lead you to something else, something that you might want to see. So in here, if you want to review the amended changes to the RFP, you're going to click on the actual document number with the comma, the document, it's the RFP number, comma 1, indicating the first amendment. You'll click on that, and that will open it up to show you what the changes are. If you want to, you can also get there with the review changes. That little infinity or eyeglasses icon will put you to the same screen, basically. And then after you have done this, you're going to click the Acknowledge Amendments on the lower right-hand side. You'll note in e-procurement, pretty much everything that needs to happen, like when you're done and you've acknowledged or you're ready to submit, everything kind of happens on the lower right-hand side of the screen. If you don't see it, like scroll down, and half the time, you'll see it. So you're going to click this Acknowledge Amendments button, and that will take you to the next screen. And thank you. So you have now acknowledged the amendment. When you get to this screen, you're basically accepting your acknowledgement of the amendment. And so you're going to click this really tiny box saying you accept the terms and conditions of the RFP, and that that the changes that you've reviewed it, you've acknowledged it, you accept it, and then you're going to hit the Acknowledge button on the upper right-hand side, and it will take you to this next screen, which is on the next step. And then you're going to have a confirmation, which basically says that you accept and acknowledge, to which you, and that you may now respond to the negotiation, which means it will let you get into your application. And do you want to proceed? And then you hit yes, which will take you, I believe, to the next slide. And then, yeah, this is, again, the confirmation. Thank you. And then you will finally get to the terms and conditions box. This is tricky. They have this little tiny box at the bottom that says you have accepted the terms and conditions. And then you're going to click accept. You'll see that there's an accept button on the upper and lower right-hand side. And that will be the final accept step in acknowledging and accepting the amendment. So that is how you acknowledge, how you do an amendment. Now we're going to talk about how you submit an application, and you'll see why sometimes it takes, why I say give yourself an hour at least to do this. yeah, the earlier the better you can start with these grant applications or these RFP responses, the better off you're going to be. Like, give yourself time. I know from doing this for a long time, like, we can see basically people working in the environment and uploading it. And I know that people do a lot of stuff offline, but we usually don't start seeing people really touching these applications until maybe 3 or 4 days before. Which is why, you know, fun fact, which is why I never have an RFP due on a Monday, because that really kills people's weekends. And it also means if you have a question, you're really gonna be up a creek, because I know, having been in the business, how work sometimes like this ends up being taken into the weekend. Of course, that's just me. I'm sure all of you are much better time managers. Anyway, so you have done everything you need to do. You're ready to submit. You're a day and a half early because, you know, you're just that great. And you're gonna, you know, when you're ready to submit, you save that draft one last time. You can see the Save Draft button on the upper and lower right-hand sides in this case. And then you're going to click Continue. And that will take you to the next slide. When you click this Continue button, what happens is that the e-procurement system then scans kind of your entire document to prepare to tell you, like, oh, we think you might have missed this. So here you get a lot, sometimes you'll get, like, when I've done this in a test, you know, with test documents, I can get like 5 error messages. It's basically e-procurement being like, hey, we're not sure if this is exactly what you wanted, or we want to make sure that you know that you didn't answer this, or whatever. So this is a very common one. You must quote on at least one line in the RFQ. I think the next slide has this in bigger font. And when we say you must quote at least one line in the RFQ, usually the error messages direct to something left undone in the application. And a lot of times they give you kind of keyword hints. I don't find e-procurement to be particularly intuitive in how it communicates, but I have learned that, you know, the error messages usually they do kind of give you those hints. So in here, you must quote on at least one line in the RFQ. You look right below it, you see this tab that says lines. In this case, we do not require that you put the actual budget into the lines section of the RFQ and e-procurement. We always tell people to do a cost proposal or upload a budget, and we review that. So but e-procurement still wants you to put lines in there. You can go in, put placeholder numbers. You can put real numbers, you can put fake numbers, just put a number, and that will take care of that particular error message. Let's go to the next slide. In this error message, it says, a quote value is required for requirement first name. And so in this example, the error is about an unanswered question in the application. The application question section is referred to as requirements, and quote value is, in this case, refers to your, you know, in this case, missing answer. The missing answer in the field first name. So in this case, you would open up your requirements, you would find the field named first name, and then you would put in the quote value, which is just your answer, which, as you recall, is limited to 4,000, including punctuation spaces. So that is how you would answer that. You know, those are kind of the 2 most common error messages people get. So I like to just kind of go through it. Next, let's go to the next slide. So after you've done all of, you know, your application is free from errors, you're ready to proceed and submit. And at this point, clicking continue will put your application into this review and submit phase. You can see that because it says review and submit on the upper left-hand side there. And that gives you the opportunity to basically scroll through the entire application and just do one last check to make sure that you have the attachments you want, that you've answered all your questions, that, you know, everything is kind of the way you want it to be. So let's go to the next slide. So yeah, see, this is it. In the next slide, you'll see when you scroll down to the bottom, you have the ability to do the electronic signature. So this is like the little trick. You have to put in your name and your title before you click the tiny box that's above name and title, or else you'll get an error message telling you that it wants you to put your name and title in first and then click the box. And then let's go to the next slide. So you'll do that. I couldn't fit this all on one screen, but if you were to scroll over from that prior slide, you'll see there's a submit button, and you click submit, and then you will be done. So let's see the next slide. You get the confirmation. So you'll get this confirmation screen that makes sure that you have submitted. The e-procurement now sends a confirmation email within 24 hours of your submission. And a lot of times those end up in people's spam. If you are a person that really just wants verification immediately, please don't hesitate to call or email me. It is not a problem at all. I can see when you've applied. 3 seconds, basically. You know, as soon as you hit the button and it's accepted, I can see it. And I am more than happy to provide you with confirmation on that. I know our applications sometimes are long, people work hard on them, and there's always that like, oh, did it really happen kind of feeling. So that confirmation screen is great, but if you want just like the extra security, don't hesitate to call or to email. It is not a problem, and I'm more than happy to look this kind of stuff up for people, especially if it gives them any sort of peace of mind. So that is basically all I have to say in regards to e-procurement. We're now at the point where we can take questions about the application, or if you really want to, if you have any procurement questions, like please, by all means, ask away now. And let's see, I can see here there is a few questions. One, this would be, I think, for Samantha or for Lisa. It says, is East and West Garfield Park eligible? So I don't know if Lisa or Samantha, you would like to
This is Lisa Hampton. I'll take that. So the agencies listed in the RFP are the only community areas listed in the RFP are the only community areas that we are looking for support and applications for at this time. So as Samantha indicated earlier, we already have some existing providers that are doing services and so we are just covering the 4 community areas, and the only applications we will take are for the 4 community areas that are listed in this particular RFP. And that is, once again, New City, South Lawndale, Greater Grand Crossing, and South Shore. Samantha, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, that is it. Thank you, Lisa.
At this point, that's the only question that people have. So I think why don't we give you a couple of minutes to see if there are more questions from people about the scope or the actual program. And so here's good afternoon. Forgive me for drawing a blank, but what is a SCaN delegate agency? That's a good question.
I can take that. Julia, you could also answer that, but a delegate agency is what we refer to as the agencies or organizations that we fund. So when we are referring to the SCaN delegate agencies, we're talking primarily, we talk about the previous ones or the current delegates. Those are the 13 agencies we have funded for this current year. And then when we're talking about delegates for the future year, those would be people who successfully submit a successful proposal and we have agreed to fund. Lisa, did you want to add anything to that?
No, but if you're interested in a list of who those folks are, I think Samantha mentioned this earlier. They're located on the City of Chicago Violence Reduction dashboard, and there is a link provided in the RFP page as well. So those 13 agencies are listed in those 2 places.
The link is on page 3 of the RFP.
So no more questions. We're giving some folks time. Make sure you look at the RFP, see if there's any questions you have right now.
If we have questions after this call, who can we contact? That information is in the RFP document, which is part of the application. You'll contact myself, and it's also again this handy dandy slide. You'll be talking to either Samantha for programmatic questions or myself if you have more administrative questions. Here, will staff meet with potential applicants individually for more personalized questions? You know, obviously, if you have a specific question that's very unique to your application, your organization, this, you know, we are available to answer those questions, but we, but it is limited. We're not going to write the RFP for you. I can't think of a question that is like I'm not entirely sure. I can't personally think of a question that would be like so personal that or so unique, but I'm sure there's examples of that. If it's a question that can be generalized that we receive via email or phone, we'll put the answers into the FAQs to share. And we, you know, thanks to COVID, we don't really meet with anybody these days. You can call, you can email, but nobody's meeting with anybody, as we all know. And furthermore, yeah, there's no meeting. You can call or email. I don't know if you guys, if Lisa or Samantha, if you have anything to add on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, you know, this is we are stewards of city dollars. And so because of that, this process has to be very transparent and very open. And so even questions, so this webinar, like as indicated, we will send an addendum so everyone can see the questions people had and how we answered them. And then we do keep a running record of questions that we get from people even online, just so that we can have a copy of that. So I think, once again, happy to answer people's questions individually, but do understand that this is a city process and it is open, and so everything is subject to a FOIA request as well. So I just want to be mindful about that. So we are trying to make sure that it's a fair and equal process. So happy to answer questions. And as they come in, just want to make sure that it's transparent. To Julia's point, we're not going to tell you something that we wouldn't tell somebody else. All the responses are pretty much going to be the same.
One of my jobs here is to make sure that we have that we maintain a transparent and equitable process. That's something that's very important to really all government agencies. Are there any more questions? Yeah. Well, I'm not saying additional questions at this time. Do you have Samantha? Oh, here we go. Can you share a little more about the salary requirement for navigators? The salary can only be funded by this grant. That's a great question.
This is Lisa. I'll take that question. 42 is the minimum, but you can pay anyone up to whatever you'd like to pay them, and it can be from a variety of different sources. For the 42, so there are folks currently who have coupled that through other sources if you want to pay somebody more than that. The minimum is set because based on best practice studies in the field and what we know the demands are for this job, we want individuals to be paid accordingly. What I will say is, If you are coupling this with other funds, please note the staff person cannot work on any other activities. This is not somebody who can be part-time with mentoring, part-time with your other program. They are a full-time employee navigator for SCaN. And so that is something that you'll have to work out with your finance team. But they cannot, if you're going to couple other funds together, know that they cannot be working on other deliverables outside of SCaN if you're going to utilize other dollars.
So I guess, are there, oh, can you expand on allowable costs?
I think I'm taking this one too.
Lucky. Lucky.
Hey, Samantha had to do all the other chatting. It's just, this is why I'm happy to support this way. So for those of you who have contracts currently with the city, you know that with certain things that are considered allowable costs. So based on the grants, based on the RFP description, we're asking you to put a budget together and thinking about what are the needs for youth at the highest risk of violence in that sense. So what I will say, you know, things that historically the city has always allowed for are things such as, you know, gift cards, supports of that nature. So once individuals are chosen and awarded their contracts, they will have to do a new budget anyway that will be scrutinized by our finance team to ensure you meet all the allowable costs. What we want you to demonstrate for this RFP is that you have a very clear sense of what are those needs and what are the cost of those needs. We want them to be reasonable and realistic. We'll, you know, as well. So it's so thinking about it in that sense of what you need to be thinking about as you put your budget together. What are some needs and services that you know are cost related, that are going to be related to youth at the highest risk of violence. The allowable cost issue will play out clearly more once individuals are awarded, but we want to make sure that you're able to think about what are those needs and be able to put those into a budget as well. So like I said, once again, things like clothes, things like, you know, gift cards, things of those natures, and what's the justification for those. I hope that answered your question. Samantha, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, nothing to add. We have another question came in. Should one agency apply or should a coalition of agencies submit to demonstrate the network services available for you? Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but they could do either way. There could be one agency applying and you demonstrate this sort of network through your responses to the RFP, or there could be a coalition. Is that correct, Lisa?
That is correct. And so if you are applying as a consortium or a coalition, you still need to have one lead fiduciary agency that's applying. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julia. And no, that is the person who we will screen for eligibility. So all of the eligibility issues in relation to meeting the 250,000, all of those things, they will have to meet that in order for your RFP to be even considered. And so if you do it that way, just make sure that everyone is aware that we would be screening that fiduciary entity that's acting as your lead. And that the other thing I would stress is people have to use their legal name that's on all of their documents. You run into this a lot. So if you were a place that's an acronym, when you apply and put your information into a supplier or a procurement, you need to ensure that the document name that you use is the same name that's listed on your insurance, that's listed on your, your corporation papers, everything along the way. So that's the other thing I would just, if you're going to apply through a partnership with other folks, just make sure all of those things are in place.
Could you please expand on the learning cohort? Is this something that will be required as an awardee and must be written into the proposal?
The learning cohort is something that is required. You are required to attend. As we said, they will occur at least quarterly. And we're expecting the program manager to be the person who attends those cohorts. It is not something that necessarily I think needs to be responded to in the proposal, but you should be aware that it is an expectation if you are awarded. Lisa, is there anything you would like to add about that?
No, that's fine.
Are there any differences with the current SCaN programs in this new one other than adding the new communities?
Hi, Gina. No, we've just added the 4 new community areas.
I think that might be it. If we don't have any other, we don't want to keep people unless there's any last lingering questions. I'm not seeing any, but I just want to double check with everyone else.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions. If something comes to mind after this, you have my contact information as well as Julia's for the non-programmatic questions. This webinar will be posted to the DFSS YouTube page either later today or early tomorrow. And the questions that were asked will be added as an amendment as Julia went over. Thank you everyone for attending today to learn more about this RFP opportunity and asking very thoughtful questions. Before we close it out, I'll ask Julia or Lisa if you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap up.
No, thank you so much for coming. We're really looking forward to seeing your applications, and do reach out if you have questions. And remember, save often and start early.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.